Hello, welcome to another episode of Smoking Room. Today, our topic is going to be about what ifs. So, I think in a story like Umineko, where you have like different EPs and different things happen, there's a lot of like various different scenarios, but these are the kind of what ifs that are like basically we're hinging on crack level. Basically, just like Ryukishi who can't let a good thing live and die, we are also going to, make our own Go Sotsu version of Umineko and, maybe better, maybe for worse. This is your friendly neighborhood mushroom. We would also be probably delving into all Umineko spoilers, maybe some amount of Higurashi if we decided to get there, and I don't know how much, I don't think we will be hinging on anything Ciconia, but, we'll just put it for now in the beginning. So yes, please introduce yourself.
Kia ora, it's Horse, right?
Yo, it's Kyle.
Hey, it's Lurf.
Hi, it's Pokey.
Yay. So yeah, what do people want to talk about their what ifs? I think when we first came up with this idea, everybody wrote out like what kind of what ifs that they want to talk about. So let's get this out of the way. Let's talk about like EP9. Horsefly, you haven't read EP9, correct?
I have not, no.
Yes. So instead we're just gonna vaguely gesture at the direction. So yeah, do people want to talk about their thoughts about EP9 without spoiling anything?
I think EP9 was not the worst idea. It's just the execution of it. And how it's just Battler sitting there crying, I don't know who the culprit is.
Yeah, my take on EP9 is I think it's bold to okay, this is not spoiler, but like I'm just gonna say this, but like it's bold for Ryukishi basically to spend all of EP8 being like, Ange, or especially EP8 manga, to be like, Ange, this was not your fault, you were a fucking child, and like, you had zero control over, your family dying or not. For EP9 to be like, hey Ange, what if you weren't here? Like, wouldn't things be better? Smiles is the boldest of take. Don't know what kind of shit Ryukishi was smoking, but like, very, very, very interesting take, indeed. So, does anybody else here have any hot takes about it?
I more so skimmed it because I found it kind of boring, but I like the concept of it's basically sort of what we're talking about here, where what ifs, like what if this happened and then what would be the consequences. It's a lot different than usual episodes. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an interesting idea. I don't know if I would go so far as to call it like it deserves to be episode 9.
Yeah, bold choice, Ryukishi. Why did you name it episode 9?
I look at EP9 and I see like the malnourished reflection of Saikoroshi from Higurashi. And I'm like, I see what you're going for here. I understand that, and it's not like a dissimilar concept.
That's actually a really fascinating thing for you to say, because Des has this whole theory that Ryukishi can't write anything good if it wasn't like he needs to write, if his good things are only get good if you write more than like 20,000 words on it at least. And like EP9 just comes from a concept being like, it's an interesting concept, but clearly you didn't spend enough words on it, so it's bad. So yeah, I feel like that's enough vague posting. I hope that dissuades anybody from reading EP9, but, if you want to, know what kind of war crimes Ryukishi did, just after he made Saku, which I mean by he didn't give us an English port, then, go for it. So yeah, Pokey, you're the first person who replied in the chain of, your weird ideas. Would you like to back up your really cool idea, your game forgery?
Yeah, it's sort of, I guess I picture it as sort of like in episode 3 point something. It's meant to like fit in sort of a cat box of like, oh, like anything could happen. What would happen if Jessica found the gold? Sort of based on the premise that like there's the letter that Beatrice sends at the start of like every game. It says that if you solve the epitaph, that has the location of the gold. If you solve that, then I will give up trying to take everything from you. And I really wanted to know what would happen in a game where someone found the gold, like Beatrice wanted, but it's not sort of messed up like when Erica comes to the island and everything gets screwed up and turned into a murder mystery, even though she and Butler solved the epitaph. It's a lot about Jessica, but also there's a bit of Genji in there, because I feel like Genji kind of needs the attention.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Genji has too much blood on his hand that's unwashed by Ryukishi, and I need them to be somehow explained.
Genji needs more Sprite. So I wanted him to have a moment where he helps Jessica with the start of the epitaph, because he helps by giving that hint about where Kinzo's beloved hometown is. So I just wondered, what if he gave that hint to Jessica and it led to a chain of events where she, with probably some help from Battler and George and maybe even Moria, that leads her down the path of actually being able to solve the epitaph.
That's a very cute idea. I mean, this also hinges on the fact that, like, Jessica could solve the epitaph, which, I feel like, I forgot who I was talking to this about, but, like, when people, like, you know, made, like, the how smart are you, okay.
That was my friend who made it. Like,
about like how much of a dummy are you, like, you know, tier list. Jessica landed pretty like low on it, but like I could.
Jessica was by the goats,
but like, but on this flip side, like I could totally see that, like, you know, if Jessica gotten help, especially like with Genji, which basically handed her the you know, knowing where the epitaph, like, you know, where to start, and basically like, technically speaking, she has all the time in the world to solve the epitaph. Like, you know, she was on the island the whole time, so like basically she has the same advantage as like Sayo in that way, to basically be able to see it all the time. And, you know, if she wanted to confirm the answer, then she could have done it, like, you know, whenever.
Yeah, and I feel like something that's holding Jessica back is because a lot of characters, when they see the epitaph, they kind of get stuck on the first few lines. That's kind of what helps them solve it, is a lot of times Kyrie will go like, hey, why don't we break it up and like divide up the sections and see what they mean? Where Jessica's like been seeing this epitaph, and she, by this point, it's been over like a year, maybe over 2 years since it was directed. So she probably has it mostly memorized.
Like we know from like episode 1, like with the beach scene, that the cousins like have like done like the whole like Odawara thing. Like Jessica is like like, you know, like capable of like thinking critically through it. I think if she did have the Taiwan hint, she may be able to reason out like, oh, like this is where that might be, and oh shit, like that kanji looks like this.
Yeah.
Because once you know like Taiwan and you know where to look and you get like your atlas out, like it's pretty much smooth sailing from there.
Yeah, I think there's one idea for a scene that really sticks out in my mind was if Jessica was kind of stumped on the freshwater and like the train line part, I think George and Battler actually offer a unique perspective that we never get to see, which is, I think it was actually Hideyoshi who talks about the freshwater fish and how they go out to the ocean and then, or they go out and then they return to their homes. And I was thinking that sort of reminds me about Battler when he left the family.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's a fascinatingly interesting way to like see that.
I feel like that's a step that could be on the way of like, oh, someone leaving their home, traveling, like a fish.
Yes, thematics.
So what happens is basically that Jessica, maybe accompanied by George Battler, maybe Moria, she needs a lot of rest. They arrive at the room with the gold, and then Beatrice appears before Jessica, and basically she says that now the island is hers, and that she is the ruler of Broken Gina, and so no more murders from Beatrice. That was the rules of the game. And then it like shifts, and it's like Jessica waking up, and they were like, "Oh, you fainted when you saw the gold. Are you okay?" Because she just saw like a fantasy scene.
I mean, in your version, like, do people still die? Like,
Yeah.
like I guess like horrible murders still have to happen, right?
Yeah. By the end, the whole island needs, well, not the whole island, the whole mansion needs to blow up. So where this is going is they wake up, and basically what I think should happen is sort of a twist on the first two Twilights. First of all, Kinzo has been thrown into the boiler. He's burned up, so nobody can tell how old the body is. And he's missing his toes. So they offered up the 6 toes that would identify the body.
Oh,
So that's the first Twilight.
that's really funny.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Like, yeah.
Hey, okay, that's actually really
I'll be
funny.
here all week. This sort of happens at the same time as the second Twilight, which is I always think about it in terms of the game record that appears at the end of some games. It's like Shannon disappeared on the second Twilight, torn away from George. And that's it for the second Twilight. Just Shannon disappearing, and now it's just canon around.
But George died.
No, George is still around. It was
So
torn
you just
apart.
tear apart the two that are close. You end their relationship because
Oh,
she
I
just never
see.
shows up again.
I see.
I do want to ask, what are the odds that like Shannon would be with the cousins while they're solving this? Because she usually is
I think that
with them like on the beach while they're in the early part of October 4th. Like,
I think there's a possibility that Canon is actually the one who's with them when they get to the Room of the Gold. Either way,
yeah, that would be better thematically.
Yeah.
Like,
thematically that works, and it's like the choice of like the toxic love triangle going on here, where now Shannon and George are done. Shannon has disappeared, has not shown up wearing the ring that George gave her the previous night, okay. Third Twilight is where things get interesting because I've always been annoyed by the lack of attention to the third Twilight. There's a letter saying praise my name in the first episode, and then it like there's never another letter like that. So I wanted to do something with that. So on the third Twilight, we have the deaths of Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo. They were murdered outright, and it shows a little magical scene where a mysterious magical stranger shows up, who I am tentatively calling Merlin. I really wanted there to be like a sorcerer character, sort of like Ava Beatrice, who shows up and commits murders. Because now Beatrice is done doing murders, so obviously someone else killed 3. I think it'd be interesting if there was a magical scene where like Genji turns into Ronove, and then Kumasawa turns into Virgilia, and then Nanjo like busts out his superpowers.
And turns into Gap, just like we always thought he would.
Yes. It's like, yes, it is me, Gap. And so what's interesting about this is the praise my noble name. I think that it'd be interesting if they show up to the crime scene, it's like the servant quarters, and they're like, oh shit, there's this blood splatter, something was taken from this death. And it's like, where's Genji's diary that he's always had this whole time that was foreshadowed in the earlier part of the episode? So where this is going is that, okay, God, another game record is like Genji died on the third Twilight. If you think about it, he's been praising his noble name ever since he died. Because I wanted Genji to have a little bit of a redemption arc where so now that someone's actually solved the epitaph, just like with the conditions for stopping the murders, Genji is done with Kraus and Natsuhi's shit.
Does he murder them?
No, what he does is he writes a confession.
He writes about the moon terrorism.
Yes, but mostly he talks about how they hid Kinzo's death from the public because he loves Kinzo in whatever way you see fit to interpret it. They're best buddies. So I don't think he would take that lying down. So he wants to confess to the world about the fact that Kinzo's death has been hidden. And that's why he gets murdered, to silence him.
Because Goda realizes the
I
incrimination.
Yes, totally. It was Goda all along. Goda is Merlin confirmed. I do first.
I'm trying to pick up where you're putting down, but like, is this supposed to like, come to be like a Jessica like parent like culprit theory in that way of like, and then it was your family, like, it's like they were doing the murder all along, like. I guess so. There's toes involved. There's just like Shannon disappearing. So like, I guess like at this point, like like what is like I want to know like what's like how's this gonna end up?
Okay, I'll tell you. Because it's sort of like the early episodes. It's sort of ambiguous, but like the clues are in there. Is that I want it to be Kraus who did that.
Kraus. Okay.
And so Genji basically brought out Kinzo's corpse to show the rest of the family, and like he just put it in a public place where everyone would see it, and Kraus is like, oh shit, tears off the toes or just cuts them off so that no one can tell it's really him. No one can tell for sure that it's Kinzo, and then puts him in the boiler to hide the time of death.
Also, Kraus is the first one to come across the body. Like, no one else has seen it yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The rest of the idea I had for this was pretty vague. Basically, the explosion goes off, and then maybe Jessica and Kenan make it out alive. Probably not. I don't know.
I mean, we are just, bringing up all our cool ideas for our cool fanfics. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's my cool fanfic. Who else?
Who else wants to go and share their cool fanfics? They don't have to be very elaborate, but, you have to have a good idea.
I did briefly have the idea of a what if like Kyrie made it back, as in like a kind of like Kyrie like won in the shootout against Ava in the EP7 like Red Truth, like this is what really happened scene.
So like what if Kyrie survived and then goes back to Ange?
Yeah, just like what if it was just Kyrie, like everyone else fucking died, like
damn.
How would Angie take that, Like
I feel like their life would be equally miserable.
I feel that too, because like I feel like Kyrie is an expert gaslighter and Angie's 6. I can also see like Angie growing up with the Kyrie murderer theories, which are true, and Kyrie's like, no, it's not real, but like I could possibly spiral into a thing of Angie, like ending up resenting her mother because of like, you killed my brother and my dad, possibly, like fuck you.
Ooh, that is some emotional
and I wonder
great.
how that
there's some angst that sounds great.
Big angsty moment.
I mean, I feel like it would be really fascinating because it's basically it's like the dark Angie version of the Angie we know. Like the whole idea of like Eva and Angie is that like, Eva didn't deserve all the hate that like, Angie gave her. And I imagine like, if you're a 6-year-old and your mom's back and you're like, oh my god, my mom's back, and like, I'm so glad to have her with me, and it's like maybe she's sometimes weird and distant, but like, she still loves me and because I'm her daughter. And then like, growing up with like a complete manipulator who like, and then you grow to learn that like maybe my mom did kill everybody. It's like sounds like a great time.
That does sound like a really tragic story. Like
It does, yeah. And, like, I could possibly see, like, the Asumaderas getting involved, like, rather than, like, going, like, after Angie and her wealth, they see Kyrie back, they see the news, and they're like, we never really liked you, Kyrie.
Now we can use this against you.
We may want to, take this child off your hands. I can see a thing with that, I can also just I wonder like how like Angie would be handled in a scenario like that. Would like Angie still be like taken away to St. Lucia? Because it depends on how like truthful you think Kyrie was about like giving a shit about Angie, about like like whether Kyrie said that for like master manipulator.
Yeah,
moment.
Are we gonna read her in the most uncharitable light or not?
Yeah, because I've always had a theory that Kyrie said that because she knew she was fucked in that moment, and it was basically like
that's also my theory.
Just like
that's
strike
also
up
my theory.
Ava's mother instincts.
I mean, okay, I personally think like there's a lot of like basically commonly accepted theories among fans of Umineko because they just can't stand the fact that like it could like you have to read some characters with love and some characters without love for your Umineko theories to work, and like like you have to believe that George stole like Battler's letter because you like somehow you just need it to make sense in your brain. And it's like, is how logistically possible is that, or like how how realistic it is? Like, it doesn't matter. I have love for Battler, and I don't want him to forget.
I always saw it
Yeah.
as in Kyrie Rudolph, like encouraging him to write letters to his family. So he didn't think to write it.
Yeah,
to his
no,
servant.
I totally I could imagine that they were just like they didn't. Yeah,
Either way,
like
works.
there's a lot of ways that you could interpret that scene.
Has anyone read Wanderlust of the Golden Witch?
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. Actually, Hookie, that's a great thing you mentioned. So the story about Wanderlust the Golden Witch is that I think when we are on EP3 of this podcast, I was like, oh my god, I just read this amazing fanfic. It's called Wanderlust of the Golden Witch. We need to interview, we need to get the person who wrote it on our podcast. So I'm actually in their Discord server and I talk to them sometimes because but the problem is for the longest time, I just couldn't convince more people on this podcast to read it. So honestly speaking, if we have at least 3 people who have read Wanderlust Golden Witch, that basically makes enough people so we can get them on the podcast and talk about it. Because just like I said, I have read every single fanfic there is of Umineko, and most of them are mid, but there's 3 really good ones, and Wanderlust is one of them.
It's an amazing what if story, and it really does speak to what you're saying about how depending on your interpretation, just like in the actual story, the amount of love, how much benefit of the doubt you give to characters, it varies, and that version of the story. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's it talks about this mystery of was there a letter?
Yeah. Okay. So has
Not
anybody
me.
else in this call have read Wanderlust or know anything about
I
it?
haven't, but I'm looking
I've
at the
heard things about it here or there.
blurb of it, and it sounds really
Oh,
interesting.
yeah,
I might
so-
read it after this.
Just for people, the listeners who are unaware, Wanderlust of the Golden Witch is a really long fanfic. I said how many words? 100,000 or something? It's 50 I just remember. It was so long. I remember because it took me 3 days to read the fanfic, and usually only takes me 4 hours to read anything. It's a forgery about what if Battler is a trans girl named Tora, and how that influenced the story, and about what if Battler had the trans lenses to understand the queer idea, the queer ideas about Umineko, and then assortment of very interesting things happen. And there's also prolonged conversations about Star Wars in the fic, which is incredibly fascinatingly funny. But it's a really good
Literally
time.
just bookmark it.
Highly recommend anybody to read it. This is my full-hearted recommendation.
If you aren't sold already, I have one tiny little thing to spoil that will sell you on it if you aren't already. Goda is a trans ally confirmed.
You love to see it. You love to see it.
it's a fascinating fic. It is incredibly fascinating. It's you get to see how the new not how the Umineko cast reacts to trans Battler. It's just a fascinating. It's really, really fascinating.
Oh my gosh, the way Ava reacts to it is so on point and so in character.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm trying not to oversell it, but yeah. So, Lerf, you wrote that you wanted to talk about what if the OG Beatrice lived, or
didn't die during childbirth.
Yeah, or the second Beatrice the second didn't fall. So I actually when I read this theory, did anybody read that comic that's on Tumblr of somebody who drew what if second Beatrice the second didn't die, and she just lives on the island in a cage, basically in Ecuadorian, and then Natsuki and her meets and they fall in love.
Wait,
am
the
I
ideal?
does anybody?
The ideal fanfic?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a fanfic. It's like a comic, and oh my god, now I have to go find it. But like, it's basically like, it's like, oh, Natsuhi meets like middle, like not like basically like a also like, you know, like middle-aged Natsuhi meets middle-aged Quadori and Beatrice II, and then they meet, and then like they basically see each other and they understand, like they're like, we have both been caged like this whole time, and then like, you know, they like touch hands or something. I don't know. Like, I'm gonna now go find it. But like, it is a real comic that existed, and I read it and I was like, this is amazing. Like, that's why I was like, thought you were referring to it.
I've never heard of that, but I always support Natsuhi woman content. It's what she deserves after being married to Klaus. It is what it is. I mean, I had like a whole thought with like OG Beatrice like living like through childbirth, like not dying, and that meaning that Kuadorian Beatrice is like raised with both of her parents. You know, like Kinzo like coming in on occasion, and OG Beatrice like, you know, like living there and stuff like that. And I don't know. I think it's interesting, like how that could change the story of like, you know, like Ecuadorian and Beatrice like growing up similarly, but like with the mother and father figure still unable to leave, and it could possibly lead to a thing of like, oh, you know, like Rosa comes in when like OG Beatrice is like in the mansion and Beatrice is out in the garden and stuff, and you can still have that whole, like, you know, like Rosa, like, bringing Kuadori and Beatrice out. Maybe she dies, maybe she doesn't. I think in a scenario where she does fall off a cliff, it could be, like, a fascinating, like, revenge story of, like, OG Beatrice, because, like, OG Beatrice was down with Kinzo murdering a bunch of people for her, like, let's be real. That happened. If we take that version. So it could be a potential revenge plot of like, oh, one of you fuckers on this island, one of Kinzo's family, I'm not entirely sure who, but someone on this island killed my daughter. And you could have like a whole like revenge plot around that where like the murders still happen and stuff like that, which could be interesting, possibly like even like after Kinzo died, because like then, you know, you just have like OG Beatrice like there, and like Kinzo's gone, so that means like, you know, like no more like regular visits from him. Like, are the servants still going over there? Can they devise a plot? I just think there's like a lot of interesting things that could happen, and I think it'd be very fun for original Beatrice to do a funny murder.
I think that would work really well as like a first-person revenge story rather than like a mystery, like from the point of view of the original Beatrice. And I also really like...
Yeah, that'd be spicy.
Yeah, the idea of having like a second perspective on how Kinzo says the events where he met Beatrice Castiglione are, because it's Kinzo does not really act like Kinzo seems like he would act. And a lot of this, like, it makes him out to be like kind of heroic, but he's Kinzo. So I'd kind of like to see like the Kinzo vision stripped away.
Yeah,
like
it's funny because I like the fact that Umineko gives you two incredibly different interpretations of the event. There's Kinzo, who of course, you know, is the sole person surviving, who can tell the story, tells a very heroic version of that story. And then there's, you know, Claire / Sayo, who of course despises Kinzo, tells the most unsavory version of the story, where, you know, he steals the woman, he tricks either both parties for them to kill each other and then make it out with the gold. And, you know, like, and I think that's just like, it's very funny. Like, it's sometimes Ryukishi knows what he's doing, and he wrote Umineko.
No, definitely. I always think it's somewhere kind of in the middle, where Kinzo probably did do that very selfishly, probably for the gold, you know, like, just like crazy murder spree. But I do think that he and OG Beatrice did fall like very in love. I don't think Kinzo would have, like, you know, like fallen so deeply if they didn't have chemistry and they like didn't really like each other. And, like, you know, like, OG Beatrice was, like, a grown woman, like, when they, you know, like, went back to Nijima, and, like, escaped the island and stuff. Like, you know, she had to be, like, somewhere before the mansion, like, the second mansion was built on the island. So it makes sense, you know, like, that it was, like, a willing thing that she went to go live there. But I don't think Kinzo was very heroic about it.
I don't think the gold would have been, like, a huge factor in it for Kinzo. Like, I think he would have just fallen for Beatrice, and maybe been crazy about it, as he is. But
I can definitely see
if
it.
he was in it for the gold, he would have spent the gold, but he never spent any of the gold, he just used it as collateral.
Right. I was thinking in the sense of, like, get these old bastards off my
Right.
back and, like, take control
It's also
of the Ushimiya
it's probably a
family
smarter
by
way to
getting
use
rich
the
as
gold
fuck.
than just
Checks
going out and
out.
spending it, because like
Which, it could be both.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you have, like, a bunch of Nazi gold, like, people are gonna question you about it, you know?
Yeah. Speaking about Nazi gold, it's actually fascinating. I don't know if any. I feel like we talked about this. Poro Chapel. Like, I don't know how to pronounce. Do people know who I'm talking about?
No.
The person who writes the blog about Umineko, who's still on EP1. Oh my god, I'm going crazy. It's like a Tumblr blog. It's Poro Chapel. Oh, fuck. Anyway, so they wrote in their blog about how they like how they connected the dots about how Kingzul has Nazi gold comes from the fact that Kingzul is obsessed with the occult, and you know, like in a very Western sense of like occult is always associated a lot with like Nazis. That's like, oh, like the gold must be Nazi gold. You know, you don't name your bunch of children with like Germanic names because, you know, you're a normal, well-adjusted human being who didn't, you know, have like weird hang-ups about like, you know, World War II or something. And I was like, that is a fascinating take. Like, you know, like, because like the fashy elements of Umineko is very subtext basically to like it's very subtext, like, you know, but like that's how they deduced that they like Kingzell had Nazi gold was like a fascinating take, like because he was into the occults, you know, and not because he's like, and I was like, that's fascinating. Like, I don't know, I just wanted to bring up that point. Like, I think I was gonna eventually bring up that point regardless in any episode I could possibly squeeze it in, but like I was just like, wow. I guess people have very different interpretations of how that could
Are
happen.
the Nazis connected to the occult in like the mind of like the Japanese zeitgeist, or is that like a Western thing?
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm not sure about, because you know, like the Nazis and the occult connection is a real connection that, you know, like the Nazi made. Like that's like, it's not just like a interpretation of thing. Like it's like they did do it, and like, you know, the Nazis wanted to go find the funny little, you know, Christmas mans on the edge of the world. So like, you know, there all these like things that are like totally real about the Nazis, but I'm not sure if it was like conscious in like Japanese zeitgeist, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't think Ryu Kishi, like, I'm not sure, and I don't think Ryu Kishi wrote Umineko with the idea of being like, yes, and like, you know, Kingzell was a Nazi and he really liked the occult because he's a Nazi. Because, like, I don't think, like, I don't know, he is, like, you know, I don't think reading, like, Umineko makes me think, like, yes, this man is a Nazi. Like, does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Like
Kinzo went
like,
into the war because he wanted to die, not because he wanted to support the beliefs of, you know, the people who were fighting.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he had no interest of the ideologies of, like, you know, anybody else, clearly. And, but yeah, I don't know. I thought that was very interesting. So, what's the next one? Oh yeah, Kyle, so you wrote, says, what if Maria made off the island? So, like, what does that mean?
So, that's partially just me wanting there to be a timeline where, like, Ange has someone, like, that she could actually, like, really connect with and relate to that isn't Eva, because we saw how that went. Like, I just feel like the relationship between Ange and Maria, as in Maria's diary in EP4, is just really interesting. Maybe not, like, good, but it's good.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I
It's a very
also,
Umineko.
I also just can't see a world where Maria lives and, like, Rosa did not just, like, protect her like a freaking demon. And, like, 'cause she does that. She's a bad parent, but she will protect her child from death.
Yeah, like Rosa does care for Maria. She's just not more than herself.
So I just wonder, like, how would that have gone as a story? Because it's... I just want Angie to be happy.
Who
Yeah, who doesn't?
Yeah.
That's literally the plot of episode 8.
Yeah. Speaking about wanting Angie to be happy, I'm currently writing a fanfic about Angie, and I need beta readers.
I need to
and
read
people
it.
just to
For gore.
I'm here.
the idea of the fanfic just assaulted me at night one night, and then I just bolted up and then started typing, and I was like, this is not normal human behavior, but sure. If I eventually put this on AO3, maybe I'll tag it my own name, and maybe I won't, but you know. I would like everybody here to read my fanfic and help me,
I'm
please.
sold.
I'm
I'll
having
read that.
a difficulty.
Sure. That sounds really interesting.
I finally have free time to do
Yeah,
that, so...
So, okay, Horsefly, you wrote that, what if George wants to see Shannon's body in EP1? As in, like, are you saying that, like, what if he actually noticed that Shannon's body was a fake body? Is that what you're imagining?
Yeah, because like they say later on in like EP7 or something, they say like if he just insisted on seeing the body, it would have destroyed Sayo's entire plan there. Because like Hideyoshi's like, no, don't look, but like he doesn't seem to care that much. Probably because, as we discussed in another episode, he probably thinks they're all fake murders. But if George goes like, no, I have to see, and then there's nothing there, and he's like, what? And then like the jig gets up that like, oh, these are all fake murders, so they check the bodies. Oh shit, no, these are real murders. I think that maybe changes a lot of the way the episode goes. Because like, assuming that Hideyoshi and Ava think the murders are fake, like, they will not let Sayo into their room, for example. Like, they're probably not even going to split up from the rest of the group. Like, there's no more real accomplishing to be done. And like, they probably know who is committing the murders as well, because they've talked with probably Sayo. So I think it just like completely derails EP1. If George, and it's like a really small change. It's something that might be in character for him to just be like, no, I just have to look. I have to see. Yeah. You know, this is my beloved.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of actually fascinating because I really like the idea that the EP3 scene is basically a echo of like the EP1 scene, where basically in EP1 he's like, I can't look, even though he's like literally right there, and in EP3 he was like, I know you told me not to look, and now I definitely have to go look for her body. Like, and basically that's the echo of the EP1 chunk. But like, I just think that's like totally fascinating. I mean, this really depends on like, when Sayo presents to the adults, like, does she just presents the fact of being like, I am Sayo, also I'm Canon and Shannon, or she just says like, I am Beatrice, and then they're like, but you're Shannon, and then they, you know, like, I don't know, like, I don't think like Sayo, like, you know, shows all the cards at that
Yeah,
moment.
because it depends on how you perceive how Hideyoshi's acting in that scene, because it's either Hideyoshi knows Canon and Shannon at least are the same person, because Canon's doing that, or is it a thing of, like, oh, Canon and Genji are like, oh, yeah, Shannon is gonna be elsewhere, so she can't pretend being dead right now, but she's gonna be, like, doing this thing in the background, so we just have to pretend her body's here.
It's like, because we see in I think it's episode 1, that Kraus showing Nazi the block of gold that he got. Like, I think the implication could be that there was a letter attached to it with the instructions, and then they know that the servants are all in on it. So that's why, in their minds, Shannon isn't actually in the shed because like she's a part of this fake murder. I don't know. I think that the idea of like a story from George's perspective would be interesting. It'd be interesting if it ends with him like finally figuring out that they're the same person.
I feel like I will never be able to accurately write I can't either accurately write or accurately read other people write George, because I feel like the fandom's interpretation of George and what George's actually is and everybody's various different opinion about it really clouds my understanding of what kind of action he would do.
Yeah. George is an enigma to me, solely based on like me reading Umineko and then me seeing like the 12 different fandom interpretations of George. I'm like, no, he's like okay, or no, he's the worst fucking character, irredeemable, and everything in between. Like everyone has a different opinion on George.
Also, I do want to say, so I finally found the fanfic I was talking about. It's actually not about Natsuki. I don't know why I thought it was Natsuki. I guess it's just the interpretation of the artist went for, but this is from the blog, like Brimstone, and it's incredible. It only has 3 parts. It's a very short comic, and it's a AU where Kuwadori was billed for, like, the first Beatrice, and then, like, Kingsol's wife meets like her and they have gay romance. Like it's really good. I send like the 3 links, basically the 3 parts and I will also attach them when we do the episode, but like it's fascinating, very interesting interpretation.
I think Kingsol's wife deserves
and just
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
She deserves to be a real character.
She doesn't even have a
She doesn't even have a name.
Yeah, she deserves to be a real
She has even less rights
Yeah.
than Genji. That's an accomplishment.
No, it's so true.
Yeah, but it's incredible and interesting and like, and sad middle-aged gay women doing sad middle-aged gay women things. Like it's, I don't know, it's a good time.
Gotta love some sad
What do I
middle-aged gay women. That's what Eva Natsuki's all about. That's why it's like the most popular ship of the Ushiromiya adults.
That's such a fucking fascinating ship to me. I just like think it's just fascinatingly funny. I guess I'm not on board, but I can understand the
Like
appeal.
I understand the appeal. I've never shipped it myself, but like I understand why it's so popular. Everyone loves
truly.
women being mean to each other, but also being gay.
Yeah.
Gay people. That reminds me of another what if that's a lot briefer than my other one, which is what if Jessica fell in love with Shannon instead of Canon?
Yeah, truly. I think
that would fix a lot of problems.
I think about that a lot in general because, like, I'm just like, there's a lot of very sapphic moments about Jessica in a very funny kind of way. Like, Jessica, like, you could simply always had interpreted as, like, well, Jessica's being mad that, like, Shannon is going on dates with George because she likes Shannon instead. Like, all this stuff. And, like, damn. And, like, I don't know. I feel like Jessica has all the qualities to be bi. Like, like, I feel like
there's no way Jessica isn't bi. That's my interpretation. You look at her and tell me that she's straight.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't.
There's no way.
It's like, is there a straight explanation about her love for Toho? Like, do you think straight people like Toho? Like I have met many Toho players and none of them were straight. Beat that.
So true.
But yeah, I don't know. Like it's kind of funny that way. So yeah, it would truly been interesting if Jessica liked Shannon instead.
Yeah, they have
How
a lot
sad.
more chemistry than Jessica and Canon, even though they're the same person.
Oh, that's honestly true. That's actually a very interesting thing that you brought
It's
up.
outright in the text.
And it's also a thing of like, like they've been friends for such a long time, and like if Shannon like saw Jessica having a crush on her and Jessica admitted that, like what does that say like to Sayo? Like, one, it's okay to be gay, for one, and two, this person who she has been close with like her entire life, like way closer than George, likes her and is in love with her, like, I think that changed a lot of her worldview.
Yeah, exactly. It still gives me the funniest whiplash when I read that line in EP3 being like, George being like, wow, I didn't know that you were into mystery novels, and then just like, and I'm like, very cool, George.
You never ask her about anything.
I suppressed that line from my memory. It doesn't exist. But what did you say?
Oh my god. Yeah.
George just sits there fantasizing about his married life with Sayo with their 5 kids and nothing else.
I still think it's fun. I feel like it makes me funny. Like, it's like the way how you say, like, oh, you suppress that line memory. It's like, yeah, I suppressed the line of memory when Ryukishi just boldly claims totally George would accept Sayo. And I think about that line. I'm like, Ryukishi, why did you do this? Like, what are you trying to say? Like, why are you like this?
There's a very, let's not make this episode all about what George's personality even is, because that's worth an episode in and of itself. But like, there's an element of like, we're kind of supposed to be rooting for George, even though he's a terrible person. And I don't know whether Ryukishi knows that he wrote George as kind of a dick.
No.
I feel like he...
I think he knows. George has like a whole like self-aware moment in one of the episodes.
Yeah, I think that's in EP7 when he's like... Or maybe not EP7. I forgot which episode.
I think it's
EP6. Yeah, EP6. And where he's like, you know, I thought women didn't like me because I respected them, but then I realized I respected them too much. Well, not those exact words, but you get my idea.
That's the vibes of what occurred.
I just have to say this. I think it's insane to me that Yuikishi somehow just wrote the most topical story of all time that, you know, comments on our, you know, current society about, like, you know, true crime podcasts. Incel man with his funny insult thoughts is just so fascinating to me. Like, I understand he didn't write this for, like, a Western audience in mind, but, like, you know, there's a lot to extrapolate here.
There most definitely
There's like,
is.
yeah, you're reading and you like think like he's gonna say the word incel soon, and then you go, oh wait, that word didn't exist. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And like you know, it didn't even exist by the time when the translation came out. Maybe it did. When did the word incel got popular? It's a very 4chan-y question, but you know.
Oh, before we go off, what if Jessica liked Shannon? I had something really similar that I'd like to talk about, which is what if Sayo was only into women and like didn't give a shit about Battler and George? Because I think that's like a relatively small change. I mean, you could argue it's a huge change, but like a relatively simple change, shall we say? And I think it makes a huge difference.
Definitely does. Because then it begs the question, would the murders happen at all? Like, would she be longing for Battler, or would she be longing for Battler like a friend who had her back, who abandoned her, rather than like a love interest?
I feel like you could read, you know, you could definitely just read Umineko as the most complex story possible about, you know, a person who's incredibly gay but continuously having horrible complex thought that, you know, drives them to murder. Who doesn't? And like, I think of that as like, it could just, like, I feel like the murder could still happen in a very interesting way, because the thing is like, okay, if you have to look at all the people that, like, you know, Sayo designed, she only designs women. Like, how many men did she design? One, and it's Ronove, who's a gay man. So, like, you know what I mean? She even made, you know, she even trans the, like, Nanjo. So, like, clearly, like, you know, like, and she, like, that's a joke. But, like, I just mean, like, in the way, like, you know, she even made all of her, like, annoying bullies to be, like, her, like, groupie, and, like, made them all wear sexy uniforms. So, like, I feel like there's a lot of, like, you know, undealt with sapphic feelings that, like, you know, Sayo definitely had. And, like, I imagine, like, the murders could still happen in the way, like, where in the end, like, you know, Sayo justifies it because she believes that, like, she loves Battler, but she doesn't love Battler the way, like, you know, other people, like, you know, that she loves Jessica or something. Her. Yeah, or, like, you know, like, that she longs for Battler as a partner of an understanding of some sort and not, like, as a romantic partner. Like,
the true queer platonic relationship that we all needed.
Yes. So like, and I feel like that is still like a very interesting interpretation because like, you know, Battler has a very iconic line being like, I want to like play with somebody, you know, not caring about gender. And like that line is attractive to like Sayo regardless if she's like into him romantically or not. And I think that's a very interesting idea. And I mean, you know.
Yeah. That also reminds me of that part of that line where Battler references Jessica's personality about his ideal woman. It's
yeah.
Like, Shannon's like, yeah, or Sayo is like, yeah, same.
Same. Yeah, I totally love Jessica. Isn't she so cute? And then just like stares blankly.
Oh my gosh, Battler wingman theory.
Yeah, honestly speaking, that's a great, like, that's a very interesting way of thinking about it. I mean, it would of course add on to more angst about like Sayo, because then not even getting married with George feels like an escape that she can go for anymore, because then, you know, she will be continually so lying to herself. Like, even if she got out of the island and, you know, go have a quote-unquote happy life with, like, George, she would just be, you know, in a unhappy straight relationship where she can't have
I was
straight
imagining
babies. And
Like, I can feel that being a scenario where Sayo feels, like, more forced to be with George, like, because, like, yeah, happy life, I'll be fucking miserable, because I do not feel this way about this man, but, like, that's how I'm
I was
supposed
kind
to
of
feel,
imagining
right?
she just
It'll
turned
be
George
fine.
down. You know, maybe maybe you're right. Maybe she wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. It's kind of a shitty power dynamic there. So like you can kind of imagine how that would be pretty angsty.
yeah.
Devolves into like a magical interpretation of the scene where like two different like future versions of Sayo appear in the story, and they're like haunting everyone. And one is like where she goes with Jessica, and one is where she goes with George.
That's a really cool way. I'm glad that we're just out here like writing a whole ass fanfics on this podcast.
What else are we supposed to do when you finish Umineko?
I think the other thing I want to say about like about Jessica is like I think like she's definitely like the least problematic ship. So like and I think like just reading between the lines of Umineko, I feel like Sayo like rates her the lowest, which is kind of sad because I think like not objective but like an objective ranking, I would rank her at the top because she's probably a better person for like listening and paying attention, and like probably would be better for Sayo if she was like into that.
It's kind of crazy.
I think we all agree George is at the bottom of that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh, for sure.
Yeah,
And then it's a matter of like Battler forgot about her for years, but they still like have good like dynamics if you interpret her as bi.
I feel like it goes George, nobody, Battler, Jessica.
I think nobody is competing for the top spot with as a 3-person tie.
Yeah.
It's crazy because this is a really cursed content which I'm just gonna share with share with everybody right now. But like I have watched a friend play Umineko and they were like, wow, Shannon and Canon have great chemistry, and I was like, in what way? And they was like, in a way that I think they will be together if they could just figure themselves and, you know, leave this fucking island and self-improve. This is before they finished like EP3 or EP4.
Okay.
They were like, if they like leave this island and get themselves figured out, maybe they can just grow to become better people. And I was like, it's kind of fucked up if you ranked like Canon above George, who, you know, Canon's not even a real person.
But we do agree that Sayo X her personas to work through her issues is very spicy content.
It's just hilarious to me. Like, I'm just like, you can't just rate your OC X yourself as a better ship, but then, you know,
Don't become a Mary Sue.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna make a joke of like Sayo being like, well, who would treat me better than myself? And then I remembered that Sayo is suicidal.
It's funny.
That you can just read that very upsettingly, like that specific sentence. But it's always crazy to me looking back on EP2. Like Jessica's kind of like a half step away from just understanding what's going on with Sayo.
Oh yeah, talking about like having multiple like not personalities, but like multiple fronts of how you present, and you want to present a certain way to your friends and to your family, and basically she's going on this whole lecture about how like canon, you should expand your horizon, and you're just like,
I think we were talking about that in the ADPR server where it was like if Jessica did know the whole time, that whole conversation becomes like 10 times funnier because it's like, canon, I would totally accept you if you had like another persona, like a real you who you actually were,
wink
that
wink,
you wanted to be.
I feel like in a way like Jessica is simultaneously the most tone deaf but also the most encouraging person possible. Just absolutely like just she's so precious, like
She is.
yeah.
I stand by Jessica morally best character.
Like even though Canon like turns her down, like she's like heartbroken, but she's like willing to be there for him, like even just as a friend.
Yeah, absolutely, like not resentful, like understands that he needs time, is still like incredibly interested in him. I mean, like, that's one of the reasons why I find Jessica's character so interesting, because of the fact of, like, Sayo made canon to be the worst parts of herself that she wants to not, like, worst part of it, like, but, like, the annoying, like, the things that, like,
The parts
she
of
wants
herself
to be...
she hates.
Yeah, the parts that she hates. Like, she basically made a pre-egg of herself, like, just to test it out, to see how if she likes it. She's mean and she's cold and she's aloof or whatever, but like Jessica likes that, and like I think there's something attractive about the idea to like Sayo that like, wow, like even the like somebody likes the worst part of me, and like I don't know. It's too bad that Sayo doesn't understand that she also might like women, so like she could have like interpreted that and like did something about it, but like I don't think she was able to work that idea out even until like her very last moments.
Yeah, and I never think that Sayo like I do think Sayo like is really in love with Jessica, but I like George, I don't think Sayo had like confidence in Jessica, of just like, George, he has a future for me 100%, but he wants something of me I can never give, and Jessica really likes the worst parts of me, and I really like her as a friend and as a person and as a potential girlfriend. However, she has nothing for me. Like, if I'm with Jessica, I'm stuck here. Like, like there's no like planned future. Like, I don't know if I can rely on Jessica to give me what I need.
And then she thought she could rely, but they proved that it was wrong to rely on him because he just abandoned her.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because if we take like the idea that George would accept Sayo even if he knew, if we take that as canon, and then obviously in the story Battler does, because they get married, and then I think we can safely assume that Jessica would. There is an alternate reality where everybody just talks about what's really going on, and then the murders don't happen.
I mean, isn't that what like the whole talk in the EPA manga was about, where like Sayo's whole tragedy is the fact that she had all these like helplines that she did not use because she did not believe they were there. Mm-hmm. I think in a good Umineko what if is what if Sayo just fucking told someone.
Yeah, that wasn't just Kumasawa or Genji.
That wasn't one of the motherfuckers who are, indulging in her little murder-suicide fantasy.
Yeah, I still think about that. Like, there's so much blood on Genji's hand about the conceptual idea that he just, like, has, like... The culpability of this man is non-existent. Of like, if somebody comes to you and it's like, "Hey, I would like to do a murder-suicide," your answer should not be yes. Yeah. How would you want it to be executed? It should be, no, you should get some help. You have so much money. I could send you to like therapists. Like, quit your job. Like, any amount of these things. Like, like it should have never been like, this is the only way. Like, I don't know. It makes me just like so mad to like imagine like, it's complete negligence that like, led to all of these horrible things happening.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've always considered Genji being suicidal himself.
Oh yeah, I mean, understandable.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, if you take the gay Genji interpretation, which with Renove's existence, how can you not? And you know the lines about like Kinzo's wife even being jealous of Genji. Kinzo, you know, dies, and like that's like pretty much the thing that Genji has been living for like his whole life. Like he's never quit his job. He's been working here for the longest. Like Genji, I don't think thinks he has much to live for past that.
Yeah,
And the
so
one thing he was living for, you know, Kinzo's child is like, I want to die, and Genji's like, shit, me too, fam. Like, how we doing this?
Wow.
That's a great interpretation of Genji. That's actually fascinating. I guess I never thought about that Genji could be suicidal, but like, you know, with that line of thought, I could totally see it. Like, I could understand, like, he's just like, what else do I have to live for? Like, you know.
Yeah, I've thought it ever since, I think it was, like, the end of EP2, where, like, you know, like, Genji has that whole, like, walkthrough with Battler, where, like, you know, they're all about to die, and Genji's like, I'll explain it to you now, like, you know, like, Sayo's dead, so, like, whatever. And at the very, like, end credits, it's like, oh, Genji, like, he finally got to rest, like, it's time for him to sleep. And I was like, I think Genji wanted this. Genji was absolutely like, I just want the eternal rest. I'm done living, please. I'm so tired.
Like, please release me from this household. Like, oh, that's an interesting interpretation.
What if Nanjo's old college buddy, who was a therapist, came to work on the island?
What if Ushiromiya got therapy?
What if getting therapy was not stigmatized and the Ushiromiyas had someone?
I mean, I think about this a lot. I think like lots of people on Twitter talk about this. Is like, it's like Sayo would have fucking thrived on 2012 like Tumblr blogs, like you know, like she would have been probably the happiest when like Tumblr implemented the system where you can have multiple blogs on your own blog. It's like,
oh, it's true.
It's
Sayo with like the 5 side blogs.
Yeah, 5 side blogs, does RP all day for fun, and like, you know,
Replies to herself as Gap.
Yeah, no, like, yeah, basically, like, I imagine Sayo has 5 blogs and she just, like, RPs with herself because she thinks that's really fun.
Oh, what's that, like, one, like, meme post where it's, like, talking to yourself is bad, no it isn't, shut up, and it's, like, all, like, the same, like, people.
Yeah, that's Sayo. And, like, also, like, I just imagine, like, I wish Sayo grew up in a time where internet existed. Like, that's my cool what if, like, Sayo, like, despite of anything, like, the internet would have helped Sayo, like, as in, like, you know, she could be out here making weird ARGs on Tumblr, like, you know.
Sayo would make the best ARG.
Like, it's
she could
just...
be a Twitch streamer.
Yeah.
And, like, publish her videos to YouTube and get sponsored by BetterHelp.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I don't know, she could get her, like, mailed in HRT, I don't know, like, there's so many things that, you know, she could be doing.
That reminds me of a comment I made on one of the When We Cry videos, which is, like, an alternate reality where it takes place in the modern era, so, like, Kinzo had, like, social media accounts, and then after he dies, they have to keep, like, posting about Beatrice to keep up the illusion that he's alive, so nobody gets suspicious.
Yeah, all of that, just, like, I love the idea. It's like, would Ava, like, Kraus just spends all his time, like, you know, like, buying apes on, like, twitter.com, like, being friends with all the crypto bros, like, is an absolute Elon simp, like...
Oh, I love all the Kraus 8 memes. They're so good.
Let's talk about the next big what if we want to talk about. So the idea is that, you know, the end of Umineko is sad. I mean, I imagine many of you shed many of tears. I have basically cried for, like, the Umineko ending, like, every single time I've seen it. Like, I think... There's, like, very rarely I have not cried for it. Like, what is your take on that?
I cry a lot. Sometimes, like, just, like, certain songs will play when I'm, like, just, like, reading, like, normal Umineko scenes. Like, I was reading the scene where, like, Dolonora comes in and has tea with Battler, and the song that was playing, I was, like, getting misty-eyed, and I was like, why am I so sad over Umineko? Nothing's happening.
It's really hard for media to make me cry, except for things written by Ryukishi the Seventh. But like usually when a scene makes me cry, it makes me cry like a little bit, but it feels like I'm crying, like just bawling my eyes out. Like, that is how most of EPA gets me.
Umineko is the only media that I've engaged with that I've cried more than once during, and I think that's an accomplishment because I don't cry easy when like with anything, especially like written materials. Like I know Umineko has voice acting depending on the version, but still.
I cried over Higurashi, and then Umineko got my eyes like watering. I was like walking through campus like on the verge of tears.
I just shut down after it's just like thinking about it for like a week after I finish. Actually, to be honest, I don't remember that well when I finished Umineko the first time, so like maybe that's not the best example. But.
Yeah, so I think we're going to touch upon the idea of Sayo equals Ikuko, but that's honestly a very juicy, meaty episode that we are going to be saving for an eventually one day when we get enough people who like, feels very strongly about this like theory. But like, the what if Sayo didn't die in the end and get to like go off the island, like so. Like, in this scenario of what ifs, like, do people imagine, like, does Toya does Balor Soul loses his memory?
He loses his memory because he jumps in and tries to save Sayo. So I think the main question is, does Sayo jump but Battler manages to save her and they both wash up on shore? Or does she not jump and they go live and hold hands?
Well, I feel like the two is going to be very different.
Yeah.
So, okay. If she doesn't jump and they hold hands is, a very, it's a story about two people who holds trauma from like, for a long time and, go off of the island and, try to figure out their lives and, maybe on their way pick up Ange and like, reconnect with Ava and then, go figure that, like go duke it out there. But like the reality of like, if Battler loses his memory is basically the equivalent of the meta narrative of Umineko, which I think is why people like the conceptual idea of Sayo equals Ikuko, like as in like Sayo loves Battler and is waiting for him to return, like in the not even in the, like in the metaphysical sense of like you lost your memory and she writes stories to like revive his memory. Kind of, I don't know. I think like it's interesting. Like I do like. What was everybody else's thoughts about it?
I don't think I equals Y works personally. I remember there was a comment on I think it was the problematic characters one, where I can't remember who it was, but they were saying about how you can read some of Bern Castell's character like actions into Ikuko. Things like that Ikuko is really frustrated with like Beatrice because she's getting in the way of Ikuko and Toya romantic kind of subplot happening outside of text, which I think is really interesting. I think like it's. Ikuko doesn't seem like that interested in Toya like solving the mystery of Beatrice's heart. I think she's like interested in it like as an external person, and you can kind of see that in Featherine. You can see that in the way she's like a lot more detached. Whereas you'd think if it was Sayo, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm really keen that you like."
Yeah, because the thing with Ikuko is she doesn't seem to really write with the heart. I believe like the common fandom theory is that like Toya / Battler is the person like writing like the like the heart of the stories and the core of the mystery, while Ikuko is like writing like the actual like mystery and like the hard plot details and stuff, which is why like Feathering so like detached and within the authorship theory why EP5 is the way that it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the reasons why we talk about EP5 is the way it is. It's like, because, she doesn't give a flying fuck about, writing, at the heart of it. She's just here she's just in it for, the bit, like, to write, like, interesting mysteries.
Yeah.
And,
if
like,
you had heart, you wouldn't publish the Ava Truce forgery publicly for Ange to see.
Like, I actually think about this a lot. Like, Sayome, who, did a lot of episodes about, and we talk about this privately, about the fact that, like, she doesn't really like, Ikuko at all. Like, and, you could read incredibly uncharitable things about Ikuko. About, like, she kind of just, like, keeps an amnesia man for, like, a long time. And, publish all these, like, slanderous, like stories about him. And, like, not slanderous story about him, but, like, slanderous stories about, a family that, like, basically doing true crime podcast shit. Like, and, like, and also, like, I think I talked about this in the authorship theory episode, but, like, in my mind, like, Featherine, like, all the good parts of Featherine is Toma, like, is Toya, and all the bad parts of Featherine is basically Ikuko. Like, whenever Featherine actually shows that, like, oh yeah, like, I do kind of care about Ange, it's like, yeah, that's probably, like, Battler speaking there, like, and then every other part about, like, yeah, I just want to watch the world burn is probably Ikuko. Like, she doesn't give a flying fuck about this. Like, she's just, like, here to see, like, interesting things happen and not, like, and I also, like, think, like, it's, like, the same idea as, like, people projecting the idea of, like, does Ikuko like Battler romantically? Like, that's another, like, a whole can of worms. Like, I don't even know how to interpret that. Like,
I see Ikuko
like,
and Toya in, like, the world's, like, best, like, QPR. Like they're not in love, but they are, like, financially supporting each other, and they're probably married.
Yeah.
I feel like
and, like,
relationship between Ikuko and Toya, because if you think about, like, the writing styles, like, this whole time all of the episodes were written by Beatrice, but like, if Ikuko is someone who writes about love, then it sort of is reminiscent about the fact that Sayo doesn't see herself with love at all. And the fact that she's really good at writing mysteries. So it does sort of work, even though I completely am not sold on the idea that it works as a story, but as a what if, like, what if they wound up together even after getting on the boat, they, like, become a pair of writers who specialize in different things. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, of course, like, in the scenario of if Sayo survives, Sayo, like, like, in that scenario, Sayo wouldn't be Ikuko. Like, it's, like, it would be a completely different branch of, like, they get, like, that's what they're doing, and it would just basically be a happier version of the ending. Like, it's, like, basically all the promise of Ikuko without Ikuko being a completely separate woman.
Like, sorry, getting back to, like, I think Ikuko probably she does care about like, Toya / Battler. Like, I think she wants, like, I think she wants the best for him, which includes, like, figuring his shit out. So, like, I don't like, yeah, like,
good way to put it.
I wouldn't necessarily put it as, like, she doesn't give a shit. I think she has skin in the game, and that, like, she wants the person she cares about to recover, and that extends to, like, Ange. Like, I think she's probably pushing him to, like, to get in touch with Ange and stuff, like, and yeah.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
The strongest evidence against Y equals I is that Ikuko hasn't
True.
fallen off a cliff. Yet.
That is
true.
Not that we know of.
Well, we see them at the end of the story. How far in the future is, like, the magic ending? Or not the magic ending, like the tea party. Because I always imagine it was like mid 50s or like 60s Ange, but then I'm like, that's a long time.
Isn't it like 2030
Okay,
or something?
that's okay. Do you want to know by my calculation? Okay, this is the most cracked shit possible because how I'm literally writing the fanfic about that time period. So I was like, how would I fucking, like, finagle these numbers to work? And I have decided when it's 1998, they don't call 1998 present. They call 1998 12 years in the future. So like when I see the word several decades later, I don't think of it as like several decades later from like 1998. I see it from several decades later from 1986. And also by the fact of like she has like, you know, stage 2 breast cancer, I have pegged her to be like late 30s. So is that like Ange is around 39 to 40 years old in 2019.
I think that makes sense. It also makes sense because, you know, like Battler would, you know, like be like, I can see like Battler being in that age range because he would be like in his like, what, like 50s, 60s by then?
Yeah.
And then it would also make sense why Yukiko hasn't like changed that much because I think she was already a little bit older, and you know, like once you get to a certain age, like there's like a span where you just look the same.
Yeah,
for, like,
you just never
a
age.
while.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you like age rapidly.
Yeah, and you just shrivel up like a raisin. Yeah.
Can't wait for Yukiko to shrivel up like a raisin.
Like, it's just you mentioned like if Battler doesn't fall into the ocean and he doesn't lose his memory. Do we want to like briefly talk about? There's a theory that he doesn't lose his memory when he falls in the ocean. He actually loses his memory because Ikuko hits him with the car.
I love that. It's so funny. I mean, it's like we're not sure if she gets hit by. She is the one who hits him by a car, but it is funnier to think.
Oh, true. Actually, we don't know that. Yeah.
The car.
Oh my God.
I can believe that what we see.
I like the interpretation of Toya, like, looking over the evidence and, like, going all Battler mode. And, like, no, I don't believe you didn't hit me with a car. It's all useless.
Yeah, I just like the idea that, like, one day, like 40 years after that happened, Toya's, like, having breakfast with Ikuko, and, like, Ikuko's just sipping on coffee, and Toya, like, puts down his fork and it's like, hey, I figured it out. I know you hit me with a car. And then Ikuko's like, yep, sorry.
Yep, my bad. But hey, you solved the mystery.
Yeah, it's like, yep, my bad. Shouldn't have done that, but you know, it's 40 years later now. Do you want some butter on your toast? Like,
Yeah, sure, pass the salt.
Battler getting hit by the car is the funniest thing to me. Just fucking Ikuko running him over and then like adopting this man and taking him home. Like,
I just love the idea that Battler not only drowns, crawls out of the like washes up the ocean, crawls onto a fucking road, and then get hit by Ikuko. It's just like way too funny as like
He's getting Final Destination.
Exactly.
They are trying to fulfill the red truth that none escape and no one survives.
Yeah.
Like, what if Battler keeps his memories? He doesn't get hit by the car, and that means he keeps his memories, and then he goes back home to Ange. That'd be nice. That's my what if.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
That's a very cute what if. I think this will be the end of our what if episode. I'm going to edit this episode so Des doesn't have to edit around like gajillion random ass conversations. But thank you everybody for participating.
Yeah.
Be here.
And thank you so much. Everybody could say a sign off and then we can end the episode.
Farewell.
Okay, bye.
See you later.